Let me just do the protocol. The AAPAM Vice President, West Africa, Dr. Nicholas Ayamga, the AAPAM Secretary General, Professor Scott, our partners from the Chandler Governance Group, Dr. Hendry Waruhio, the Director of Research and Management Consultancy from the Eastern and Southern African Management Institute, ESAMI, and esteemed cohorts of the Strong Nations for Africa program. Good afternoon once again. Allow me to express our profound apologies for the delay in starting this program. I ensure you that we will catch up with the time and deliver this program within the allotted time. It is wonderful again to see all of you. I'm glad that you all had safe travels from Kigali and that you're able to join us here. Wonderful again to see all of you. It is my honor and really privileged to welcome you again to this last segment of the segment 2 of the Strong Nations for Africa program. I know you had a session yesterday, and this session is now organized by AAPAM. It is my hope that you were all able to attend the first session delivered yesterday by the Chandler Governance Group. As we start, allow me to recognize and appreciate all you esteemed participants for your dedication and commitment to this illustrious program, evidenced by your timely completion of daily reflection, the synchronous learning modules, and the 100% participation in today's session. I will send e-claps to all of you just to appreciate all of you. So today's session was designed to build on the foundational discussions laid out yesterday in the dialogue with Ms. Yoliswa Makasi, the former Director General for the Department of Public Service and Administration, South Africa. So today we delve into leading public sector transformation, building an agile, citizen-centered, and collaborative institutions in Africa. Let me remind us of a salient matter that was raised in the Kigali segment 1, where the speaker asked a very, very salient question and asked whether states were fated to rise and fall. And after much debate, participants agreed that states were fated to rise and eventually fall. So it is our hope that we will further interrogate this premise through these sessions and implement actionable and measurable safeguards on this particular matter. In terms of the protocol, I believe we stand on the already existing protocols established yesterday with regards to housekeeping and how to conduct ourselves during this online session. However, we shall be posting additional guidance on the chats. Esteemed participants, without any much further ado, I take this opportunity to welcome the AAPAM Vice President, West Africa, to deliver the opening remarks. You may have the floor, Dr. Ayamga.
Thank you very much, Julie, and good afternoon to you all. Professor Scott, Secretary General of AAPAM, our distinguished facilitator, Dr. Hendry Waruhio, I hope I got the name right, Director of Research and Management Consultancy, Eastern and Southern African Management Institute, ESAMI, our esteemed participants of the 4th Strong Nations for Africa program. Greetings to you all. On behalf of the Executive Committee, the Council, and Secretariat of AAPAM, I am delighted to welcome you all to this online segment of the Strong Nations for Africa program. At the outset, I would like to sincerely congratulate and commend all participants for successfully completing segment 1 of the program in Kigali, Rwanda. Your dedication, active participation, and commitment to learning and leadership excellence made the residential segment a resounding success. Esteemed participants, allow me to also appreciate you for joining session 1 yesterday, where you had a dialogue with a national leader to get first-hand experience, insights, and lessons from leadership journeys in public service. We appreciate our partners, Chandler Governance Group, for facilitating the session. The knowledge, experiences, and networks established during these sessions have laid a strong foundation for the continued learning journey that brings us together today. Ladies and gentlemen, as we transition into this session 2 of online segment, we have an opportunity to deepen our understanding of the critical role of leadership in transforming public institutions across Africa. Therefore, the theme of today's session, Leading Public Sector Transformation, Building Agile, Citizen-Centered, and Collaborative Institutions in Africa, highlights the imperative of reimagining public administration to build resilient institutions that deliver quality services, foster collaboration, uphold accountability, and create sustainable public value for citizens across the continent through strong leadership. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the realization of Agenda 2063 and the Sustainable Development Goals require public institutions that are adaptive, inclusive, responsive, and capable of delivering tangible results. Strong leadership remains at the heart of this transformation. It is through visionary and ethical leadership that public institutions can foster collaboration, build public trust, and create lasting impact for our societies. Esteemed participants, we are privileged to have with us, as I mentioned earlier, Dr. Hendry Waruhio, who is the director of ISAMI, a distinguished expert and practitioner whose wealth of experience in public sector transformation will undoubtedly enrich our discussions and provide valuable insights for all participants. I encourage each one of you to actively engage in today's session, share your perspective, ask clarifying questions, and learn from one another. The diversity of experiences presented here is one of our greatest strengths and a valuable resource for advancing innovative governance solutions across Africa. With these brief remarks, I warmly welcome you all and wish you a productive, engaging, and insightful session. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ayamga, for those brief welcome statements. And I would like to now introduce and welcome Dr. Hendry Waruhio to begin his session. Dr. Waruhio, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all the way from West Africa and from Julie. I believe you are probably in Nairobi somewhere. And just to check, can everyone hear me?
Yes, Dr. Henry. We
Yes,
can hear you.
okay, great. Thank you very much
Yes,
indeed.
I can hear you from Tanzania.
Excellent. It's just an amazing thing to see just how much technology can do for us, and if we deploy it well, then you know what achievements we can actually have. I'm trying to get my screen so that we can all be on the same page. Let me see. Is my screen legible? Is it? Can you see my screen?
Yes, sure.
Perfect. Now, first of all, is to actually acknowledge the great partnership that SAMI and AAPAM and SAMI have really had over the years. And secondly, to celebrate us who are in this cohort of this particular segment of Strong Nations for Africa. And I think as we sit and reflect, looking back from the times respective countries obtained their independence in the continent and up to what has happened up to now, and we compare that with what has happened around the world, with some of the countries that actually obtained independence, either sometimes at the same time with African economies, some of the countries here, or even slightly later, and we ask ourselves, so what happened? What actually happened? And I know, of course, I'm coming from a scenario whereby as you traverse from different countries around the world and around the continent, sometimes, you know, you hear that, you know, Africans are being told, yeah, we are just saying, maybe it's because of jujus. Right from the onset, let me mention that it is not jujus that make development happen or not happen. It is not jujus. Again, sometimes it is said that are we over an inferior gene? And there is no science that has proven that the African gene is of less superior quality compared to the other genes that have been there. But the question I think that keeps coming is, so what happened? I want to talk about, I'm talking to you from Lesotho. Came in today and, you know, had meetings here. So my apologies for coming in late. But we would like to reflect a little bit about agility, citizen-centered and collaborative public sector leadership, and the leadership imperative, because It's not the first time we're talking about reforms, transformation, governance, and all these very many terminologies and phraseologies that we actually employ. I want to structure my session across the six different text segments. Start with some thoughts. Look at today's world. Just very briefly reflect on the state of play in the public sector. Then I will come to the leadership imperative, and I will be asking ourselves, so if we are to do the transformation, what should be the formula and how do we go about it? And I will end with a call to action. Now, it's not surprising, I think, when you travel across many African economies today, farmers are still working very hard in their farms. Pastoralists are still very much keenly taking care of their livestock, and what they produce is not able to get to the market. It is not surprising that in some of the African economies, you spend more time in the traffic congestion than the time you spend working. And if we reflect a little bit about the congestion, for example, in some of the economies, backed by some research I think I did with some of my students, take, for example, a city such as Kampala, or even Nairobi and Dar es Salaam. And you ask yourself, so how much time are citizens, some of them public servants, others working in the private sector organizations, spending from the time they wake up to the time they get to work, and from the time they leave work to go home? And we estimated that on a bad day, this could take up to about 6 hours, and yet you are just working for 2 hours. And that intensifies the stress levels. And we concluded that when you get one employee getting to the workplace stressed, meeting with another employee who is also stressed, then you'll also have a stressed organization, and that will impact negatively on productivity. And the story can go on and on. So when we look at today's work and today's world, rather, so to speak, we have said that we know very well the environment in which we operate today is dramatically different from the environments we used to operate in years gone by. Many times we talk about VUCA environment, volatility, an environment which is characterized with a lot of volatility and uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, and diversity. And much more recently, we started talking about the tuna world, the bunny world, where we are talking about we have to be anxious, the brittle and nonlinear and incomprehensible world and environment in which we are. While we appreciate that this environment stays there, we must not be victims of environment. We must be manipulators of environment to make that environment work for us. And this is why then the question of leadership and the question of transformation becomes so incredibly and fundamentally important. Because many a time, as I traverse across many African economies, you find a lot of hopelessness, helplessness, people who have lost hope, and they are blaming it on the environment. They are blaming their condition and situation and context to that development partner, development aid is not working. And I keep asking myself whether probably that is the right framing that we actually have. So the environment is appreciable. It is changing, and it has changed. Technologically, socially, economically, politically, mention it. It has changed. Are we expecting this change to stop? Not any one time. So the quicker we unsettle to the uncomfortable truth that this is not about to change, the better it is. And we must be able to move out of that denial and come to practical reality and start becoming a little bit more pragmatic. This is true for the private sector, as it is for the public sector, as it is for the civil society organizations. And if I may reflect a little bit on that, civil society organizations used to swim in a lot of funding from developing countries. governments used to swim in quite a bit of money that is coming from the West, that is coming from, of course, developed world. That's not the case anymore. And the scenario and the situation, I am not looking at a scenario where it will get any better. It can only get probably worse off. So again, when you look at the society, it's changed quite a lot, quite a lot. Today, we have Gen Z who are present at workplace, Gen Alpha coming, Gen Beta following shortly after that. And in this dispensation, when we have these multiple generations, the question, and where we also have a scenario whereby the environments have changed in such a dramatic way, the question is, can we keep doing same things, same way, and expect different results? Shouldn't we perhaps feel a great sense of discomfort and a great sense of urgency to be able to say, the world has moved and we have been left behind and we need to move? And that will invite what I call the latecomer effect. And when you are suffering from latecomer effect, then every minute, every hour, every day does count. Every decision counts. Every policy and how robust that policy is matters a great deal, and how robust that policy is. But beyond the policies, we must be able to actually say, how do we execute them and how do we implement these? Now, so when you look at today's world, a number of things. It is wicked and paradoxical. Wicked in the sense that no one single problem can be seen in its isolated way and manner. That particular problem is interconnected to very many other problems. You are trying to solve a problem that society has faced because there have been floods and mudslides and landslides, and people have lost their homes. People have lost their relatives. We are seeing the problem of climate change, but it is beyond the problem of a climate change, because that affects schooling, that affects transportation, that affects health, that affects productivity, that affects agriculture. So one single way will not work. And that invites a very important question. Is the current structure of governments and public service optimized? Can we continue to structure the government the way it is today and expect different results? Or is it a period when we have to take a very deep dive and ask ourselves, how do we need to reimagine the government? And when you're looking actually at a citizen who is looking for services, is that a citizen who is looking for visiting a public office to be served? Or is it a citizen who is expecting the government to get to deliver those services at the comfort of their homes, at the convenience of their mobile gadgets, or even at the convenience of a place which is very close to where they live? Wicked world. And this wicked world will not be solved using the traditional thinking and the traditional mindset. It is also paradoxical. Paradoxical in the sense that different, wicked problems will present at the same time, but different trajectories of same truth seen differently or sitting at very extreme edges will also be there. We've seen what has been happening. Polycrisis. It is a deeply interconnected world, utilizing immense technological advancements, yet it is highly fragile and it is highly unstable. It is also a multipolar world, and it is a world which is friction-filled geopolitics. Look at what has happened between Iran, Israel, US. It was concluded, probably the deal has been signed. We had it in the first time. It's going to be a 3-4 days affair. It turned into weeks. The world is feeling the pressures of that war around it. So the current model of governance in the public sector is actually, from where I sit, facing an existential stress test. And we've got to ask ourselves in our respective corners whether that is the way it's going to work. Now, why would we be sitting here talking about public sector transformation, talking about agility, talking about citizen centrism, as it were? And I want to ask, if there was no citizen, what business would government be doing? What services would they be rendering? To who would they be rendering those services anyway? Or to what would they be rendering those services anyway? It is the citizens that get governments in place. It is citizens that bring governments down. It is citizens that build the government. But the government, of course, being what it is, and the public service being what it is, they are duty bearers. Duty bearers with and entrusted to execute the social contract. Execute the social contract while at the same time remembering those that awarded them that social contract. And if we reflected on it a little bit deeper, you actually realize that maybe I should probably ask here, do governments have money? From where we sit, and I would be happy to hear from anyone. Hassan, I see you. Hassan, do governments have money? It's a pleasure to see you and to see you on the cohort.
Thank you very much, Dr. Henry. And pleasure to meet you too. It was quite some time from Mogadishu. My thinking is that the government doesn't have money.
Great. Governments do not have money. That's very true, because all money from government will come from men and women within that country or outside that country. And that therefore means that there's no free money. The government doesn't have money. All monies from government come from people. Corporates don't have money. All money that corporates make comes from people. And a corporate, even if one was in the private sector and you have no clients whatsoever, then you would have no business whatsoever. It is true for the private sector. It is true for SME. It is true for government. It is also true for citizens. I mean, for countries. Because I would also then ask, can you have a country without people? Or can you have people without a country? Can you have a country without government? Those are fundamental questions for us to ask ourselves. And the reality of the matter is, when you start to examine that equation, then you actually appreciate the supremacy of the people and the critical importance as to why we need to render the services to the people. And I just want to say here, before I move to the next slide, all development is about people. And everything we do must therefore focus on the citizens. What is the current state of play of public service? And this is quite a bit, in my view, a bit disheartening. In fact, a bit very depressing when I look at it. You know, as Henry, I can go to the shop and buy a phone. I can go to the pharmacy and buy drugs. Those are tangible goods or products. But value and greatest value is not generated out of products. When I teach my students entrepreneurship, I tell them customers do not buy products and customers do not buy services. It is true in the private sector as it is in the public sector. Let me repeat that again. Clients that we serve do not buy services, and they do not buy products. Clients and customers buy value. They buy value. And that invites us then to ask ourselves, what public value are we delivering to our citizens? Now, water I can go buy, laptop I can go buy, drugs I can go buy, because those are tangibles. Services and trust, or rather trust, is something you cannot actually buy. You earn it. But the current state of play of the public service is, not just in Africa, but around the world, it is this trust deficit. Trust deficit. This is why we find that citizens cannot trust their government. Citizens cannot trust public officials. Citizens will probably, in many cases and many countries, trust their religious leaders more than the political leaders. Citizens will perhaps trust their relatives more, a few of them at least, than they can trust government. The question is, where did government lose it? Or where have the governments lost it? And I will be tracing this back to the leadership and the role leadership and the space and place that role leadership needs to reclaim. So what we see is a scenario whereby there's diminishing faith in traditional institutions, and the traditional institutions as we know them, they were curated around Max Weber's bureaucracy. And with that, then we become fairly rules-based, and it's okay to be rules-based. And it's okay to have checks and balances. But let's pause a moment and ask ourselves, these checks and balances, how do they resonate with the very same people we are meant to serve? And when we go that way, we then start realizing that we have organized traditional institutions, we have organized our institutions around very inward-looking processes as opposed to being very citizen-centric. I go to buy, and it is true in the public sector, as it is perhaps also true in some cases of the private sector. I go to pay my water bill, and I have to fill in a form. Imagine a Gen Z filling a form in the 21st century, when that Gen Z is actually asking us, why should we be filling a form up to this time? Because it's okay traditionally and according to traditional institutional structure to fill the form, because you need to keep a record. Should we perhaps be thinking about how to reset that and ask ourselves, how can we keep the record in a different way and different format, while at the same time ensuring that data protection is there, records are well kept, and so on and so forth, moving with the times, so to speak. I go to the hospital and I have to fill in a form, and I have to queue, and I have to visit the accounts, and I have to visit the nurse, and I have to visit the doctor, and I have to visit the pharmacy. And I guess if you map that particular process, you'll actually find that you're actually spending time in the hospital queuing and time in the hospital visiting accounts departments. And you are actually, many of us who are in this forum, I believe, did not even go back to school after you completed to go and reclaim your caution money, because you'd be spending more time in the corridors than the money you're actually trying to pursue. Outdated traditional institutions, outdated governance model. And much more importantly, the leadership outage. Leadership outage. There's compelling evidence that the quality of leadership has been deteriorating at a much steeper level than we have ever witnessed in history. Look at what is happening in the countries now. Would we say the US is still the global leader? Perhaps in some areas, maybe not in all of them. Would we trust Donald Trump when he wakes up to speak today? Most likely not. Not as much as you probably trusted previous leaders. Would you say in your country you would trust the current leader more? Or would you trust the previous and the founding fathers of our countries more than you trust the people here? The answer is, I believe, most likely. You have less confidence, less trust on the type of leadership that is there than that was there years gone by. Trust deficit and leadership outage. Ronald Reagan once said that the most terrifying words in the English language are, and I quote, "I'm afraid I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Those are terrifying words. And I have come across scenarios and situations where somebody is a civil servant. I don't want to go into the politics of civil servant, public servant, but the person is very cautious not to say that he is actually one. The person is actually a civil servant, but very cautious to take his or her child to a public school. One is a public servant, but very cautious to go to a public hospital. If we can't love that which we serve, who will? If we can't love that we serve, who will? If we can't love that which we represent, who will? Ronald Reagan is telling us it is the terrifying words is to say that I'm from the government and I am here to help. Many citizens are asking themselves, is the government really here to help? And there are a lot of cries out there. The leadership imperative. I am not here to probably say, the types of leadership, what are there and, the styles that are there. The styles come in various forms, versions, and what have you. But I think the true test of a leader is the legacy you leave behind. And that legacy, in my view, is not in what I have accumulated. It's not even in terms of how much money I contributed. That legacy is just in how positively did I touch people's lives while I served. How fundamentally did I empower people to move from where they were when I came into the office to where I left them? Because the moment of truth will surely come. And transformational leadership is about having clarity of purpose, foresightedness, vision, and that vision which is compelling, commitment, dedication, grit, and the zeal to do and to serve in such a way that when history is written, people will say, indeed, there was a man or a woman who left footprints in the sands of time. And for that reason, we can honor that man and that woman. It comes through the hope and the difference we bring today so that our children in future would be able to say, was it not for us who are there at that particular point in time, these children would not have had access to education. That elderly lady who is waiting for her pension, and you get a moment to serve her, and the blessings come to you. And this transformational leadership, therefore, requires a number of things. We can talk about transformational leadership, ideation, individualized attention and what have you, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. I am here to say this transformational leadership must engage in ruthless prioritization, must have the political courage to say no to 50 good ideas, not to 50, filthy, to say no, not to 50 good ideas, but to filthy, sorry, that should be filthy. To say no to filthy good ideas. They appear good on paper, but they are not practical. Or to say, this is a bit too ambitious. We cannot do everything overnight. I'm not saying we shouldn't be ambitious, but ruthless prioritization. For of what use is it, for example, to spread the meager resources that are earmarked for education, to begin constructing 3,000 classrooms all over the country, and the financial year comes to an end and no classroom is completed? Of what use? Of what use? Why don't we find the 50 classes that we can do them? Then we can say, if every classroom is accommodating 30 students, then we have 1,500 students in class, as opposed to we spend so much money over the year, but there is no child in class yet. And therefore, it is about results, demonstrable results. This transformational leadership must have high cognitive agility, ability to synthesize, and having the mental power and the mental mindset and flexibility to pivot strategy instantly. So this, of course, challenges what we've always known. We plan and we come up with a strategic plan and we advertise in the papers and we have a very big launch of that strategic plan. But 3-5 years down the line, the strategy is not executed. Or we remain so glued to that strategy in the midst of constantly changing operating environment. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say that we must have that mental flexibility. We must pivot our strategy instantly if we are to remain relevant in the changing times, without, of course, losing organizational momentum for change and for transformation, while at the same time keeping the macro aspects intact, the macro aspects intact. And this brings me to an important aspect of how we plan and how we execute the strategy. Because many a time, I get people saying that when leadership changes, the strategy changes. And I beg to differ. My conviction is what changes is not the vision where the country wants to go. It is probably what we want to do and what we prioritize. But if I ask, for example, Tanzania, do we want to achieve our vision 2040? Of course we do. Does that depend on who the president will be of the country? No. Citizens' aspirations will remain. That vision 2040 we want to achieve, if it was correctly done and consensus building was there, and citizens were part of that journey, and citizens subscribed and ascribed to it, I am sure, even in 2040, citizens want to have functional hospitals, world-class highways, railways, airports, classical and world standard schools, institutions that work, leadership that delivers. That vision remains. What we prioritize and what we do and how we do it is something else altogether. And therefore, talking into that, I want to say that many a time why this is so is because it's behaving like a teacher who is in class, and the teacher says or tells the Ministry of Education officials, we have covered the syllabus. And I want to say there can be two aspects of covering the syllabus. The teacher can cover the syllabus without the students. But covering the syllabus means that the teacher has worked with the students and both have covered the syllabus. Then if you have covered the syllabus together with the students, then you register quality grades when the examinations are administered. So why am I bringing this analogy of the teacher and the students? It's because sometimes leadership is working alone without the citizens. And they say, we have done. And the citizens are asking, where is it that you have actually done it? Let us become architects of destinies, but architecturing that destiny in a way that we are working together with the citizens. Transformational leaders must be trust accelerators. And therefore, we must listen keenly the anxieties of citizens, and we must remain brutally honest to the citizens and brutally honest to the consequences that we will face if we don't transform. And for me, if I was to be brutally honest about the consequences of not transforming, the rules of the game are very easy. Become distinct, or else you'll be extinct. There are not two ways about that. And one may then ask, can the government become irrelevant? Can MDS become irrelevant? And the corridors are awash with many. State corporations that were established, they are now struggling. Post offices, for example, that's a classic example. Post offices. We used to write letters, nice ones, many years ago. Who is writing a letter and posting it now in a post office? Not many. So the telecom, do we need it in the previous form it was? I doubt. Netherlands stopped postal services beginning of this year. Photography, will it be, or is it the same way it was many years ago? No. And we can go on and on. Transformational leadership of the present modern world must be trust accelerators. Honest telling the leaders as they are, our principals, honest, not just a question of saying, yes, sir, yes, madam, no, sir, yes, sir, yes, madam. No. I was sitting in a board sometime last week, a scenario whereby the political leader had promised to give some resources. And this was for a school. And the resources hadn't come. And the political leader wasn't picking the phone call from the principal. And we had the Ministry of Education represented. And the Ministry of Education officials started telling the principal and telling the board, no, use your Solomonic wisdom. And I was glad when one of the members in the board said and told the education official, I hear you, but we have exercised that Solomonic wisdom, and the Solomonic wisdom has come to an end. So give us a solution and tell us what more needs to happen. So I think at the end of the day, we had a bit of a conversation, because if we don't tell the parents that the money has not come, then we will be seen by the parents as the ones who have eaten the money. If we do not tell the board that the money was promised and it hasn't come, then the board will be saying, no, the principal is holding back the money. If the board does not tell the leadership in the right way and brutally honest, that, yeah, we cannot run the school without the money. And if we cannot tell honestly the Ministry of Education that we are running an insolvent institution and therefore we would rather close it, then we are not trust accelerators, so to speak. the moment for being honest and being truthful to the core, I think, is here. And this talks to the values dividend, values over leader, values-based leadership. In fact, I was talking to some board again. I was facilitating some board session. And I was glad when the chair said, we have to go beyond values. It is virtues-based leadership. Transformational leadership must be virtues-based. And you cannot have virtues unless you have been able to cross over the values-based bit of it. The other thing I want to mention here is that, and again, you cannot do that without really knowing, why am I here? Because if we as the board do not protect the interests of these children who are supposed to get a quality education, who are expecting the teachers to be in class, who are expecting that the textbooks are available, who are expecting that there is money for food, if we are not honest to these guys, then they will be blaming us in future. Why did you not correct it when you are holding the fort? Today's transformational leadership must also appreciate that we have to embrace multi-level and cross-boundary approaches and orchestration. Because no one single entity, no one single government, no one single ministry can do it alone. You are doing it across the layers of government, from national to subnational to the service delivery point, from national to transnational and international. So we must, as transformational leaders, have the bigger picture that we want to achieve. And for that matter, therefore, it means that we must have the vision, must have the long-term view of what we actually want to actually achieve. So, of course, again, I've previously said there are many reasons why transformations have not worked. They have not worked because, one, we framed them wrongly. We want to change structures. We want to change processes. We want to change policies. We want to rationalize. Ladies and gentlemen, I think for me, that is not where it begins. That's not where it begins. You cannot put the hardware ahead of the software. We must begin with the software. Again, we look out to the development partners to help us. Who amongst us would entrust a visitor in your home to fix your home? Simple, fundamental, and basic truths. Who amongst us will expect a visitor outside your homestead to come and fix your home for you? And this is what we've done with the development. Surrendered it to the rest of the world, yet it belongs to us. So what's the formula? And please feel free to ask any question as I move along if you want. So what's the formula? I mean, I have said in the past, and I am glad I will be meeting the top team where I am to talk about some of these ideas and things like that. And I think the reality really is, the matter is that we've got to do it ourselves. And we've got to make change a habit. We've got to make change a habit. And it's not about doing and dreaming big. Japan did not build Toyota car overnight. They studied every component time after time. They asked themselves, how do those parts complement each other? They perfected the art. They are now able to do and to say, we are now Toyota Sifao. And once they had perfected that, they started asking themselves, which other areas do we move to? Our challenge, ladies and gentlemen, I think from an African context, we want to do everything to everybody, everywhere, in every way. That's a sure bet to fail. we must reprioritize. And that reprioritization is not about doing everything. Select few, perfect them. But at the same time, keep in mind that you're not doing them for yourself. You are doing them for the citizens because that is the reason and the purpose of existence. We know what the current reality is, of course. We know sometimes, capacity, of course. And I would want to say, I think from observing and moving around and building capacity around the continent, I am more than confident that Africa, in terms of capacity, some countries have come of age, other countries are following very quickly. So if you're looking at human intellect, Africa has it, that I can say. If you're looking at ingenuity and creativity and innovativeness and inventiveness, Africa has it. We just need to believe in ourselves a little bit more. We just need to ask ourselves, and I was, I think, talking into some conference, and somebody was talking about AI. Everybody is talking about AI now, including the public service across many countries. And ladies and gentlemen, what goes into making this technology that is making AI work? And where are those resources located? Africa has the greatest reservoir for AI resources. We just need to ask ourselves, so what do we do with those resources? I go to Japan. Japan is the greatest producer or manufacturer of fiber. But where does that fiber come from? It comes from Africa. And which is the greatest contributor to that fiber? Sugarcane. Yet sugarcane is rotting on farms in African continent. And we can go on and on and on. So the transformation and the process of it, we must continuously identify areas, priority interventions. We must keep challenging our assumptions, our mindsets, and embracing new worldviews. Because this transition and that transformation is not going to be measured through any other way, but by getting to make sure that you have a bus. This bus has a driver. And this bus has passengers. Those passengers are citizens. And the citizens who are in that bus must have confidence in whoever is the driver. And they have the trust that the driver is actually taking them to a place they desire to be. And that desire is good roads, good hospitals, working electricity which is available, education which is accessible, human beings who respect each other, people who are not full of ego, but people who are saying we are in this journey together, because that way the journey becomes exciting. I'll come to the questions. Yes, keep the questions coming on the chat. But I've seen you as Sibongile, and I'll come back to the questions, so to speak. Now, many of us here, you're able to see the screen because you have the eyesight. But when you have the eyesight, it's very easy to take it for granted that having the eye should be an obvious thing. Unless and until somebody loses his or her eyesight, then you realize how much you have lost. Now, I'm bringing this because African leaders have eyes, but they are not seeing. I don't know whether that statement makes sense, but let me explain. Why on earth would probably somebody very senior, in their wisdom, go and sign an agreement for peace? Why on earth? Is the expectation that Other people will help us keep our peace. I ask myself these questions and I shudder sometimes. Why would anyone, any leader for that matter, take a flight and go all the way to China and the US and Europe asking for money to come and beautify and rehabilitate our parks? Why? Yet you have a lot of idle youth, and you have a lot of criminals who are eating our food for free in prisons. And you have a lot of people who are not fully engaged. Why can't we engage them? And I salute, when I look back, and I'm glad that you talked about Rwanda. And do we have some people from Rwanda in this platform, Julie?
Yes, we do.
Great. I salute Rwanda, and I hope for the time that we've been in Rwanda, you have picked a few lessons from Rwanda. I traveled about 400 kilometers when I landed in Kigali. I was picked from the airport at night, and I was very keen to observe. Traveled 400 kilometers, all the way near the border to Burundi and Rwanda, Burundi and Tanzania. And I want to testify here, I did not come across any pothole. And I'm glad. I think 2 days away from now, I think we'll be sharing a platform with the president of Rwanda as we talk about what needs to happen differently. 300 kilometers of road, no pothole. 300 kilometers of road, every single street light was working. 300 kilometers of road, I did not see an idle person. 300 kilometers of road, and I did not see the litter that we see in our cities. If Rwanda can do it, and if Rwanda went through the traumatizing moments they went years gone by, just 1994, thereabout, and less than 30 years, we have to learn from Rwanda. Something, somewhere, is seriously wrong. Not with the God who created us, and not with the God we pray to, but something is seriously and terribly wrong with us. Vision and the power of vision. But I want to go beyond vision and talk about the power of foresight. The power of foresight. What is it that we desire of us, of our country to become, and of our generations to bequeath from us? What is it that will bequeath them? Or will they be coming to say, we actually inheriting a completely destroyed country and a completely looted country and a completely underperforming institutions, and we have to start making over? If that is what we want to bequeath the future generations, then I would say, may God come for us quickly so that those future generations can start reconstructing their countries, because we would not be worth of being in the office. 3 things, 1 question. I think I've talked into this in previous session somewhere. We have tended to uplift the government as if they are the most superior institutions. And I want to demystify that myth. This is why, country by country, the Constitution always is at the preamble, we, the people. That signifies the supremacy of the people, because, like I said, without the people, there is no government. Without the people, there is no country. But a people can exist without a government. People are much more superior than the government. In any case, and at any rate, these citizens are the ones who are making the government function. They're the ones who are giving the government resources to run it. But what are the citizens? How do they connect with the government? It's through services, And if you look at the new public management agenda, we've moved, when you look at the transformation journey from old public sector to new public management to now, public transformation that we are talking about. And now we are retiring the public transformation and we're talking about the new, governance, the new governance. And I know later on this year, we will be talking in some platform, talking about that, the new governance nuances that are really coming up at meta level. I mean, multi-level governance. So you're not only governing the institution, but you have to govern the entire ecosystem of institutions. And citizens are actually looking at those services. Are they available? Are they affordable? Are they quality services? All those things that they would be asking themselves. So we connect. So government is a provider, probably not necessarily. I want to say this in a guarded way, because when you look at the neo thinking, the question is, what should the government be doing? Should the government be delivering services? Probably yes, but I don't know whether there is any government service that you cannot imagine of government where only the government is providing that service. Is there any? If I may pause here. Is there any service that you can imagine of that is exclusively being delivered by government in your respective jurisdictions? Anyone? You will battle to get one, because whether you're looking at security, you have private security firms. You are looking at water, you have private water companies. You are looking at health, there will be private hospitals. You look at education, there will be also providers of private education services. You look at roads, sometimes we have actually concessioned those roads and said, let us concession the road, and so on and so forth. So government then must retrace their footsteps back and say, probably as government, we are probably better off playing in the realm of policy, playing in the realm of regulation. But I also want to revisit the regulation. The regulatory role of government is not to regulate to stifle. It is to regulate to create an enabling environment so that sectors in that particular area can grow and thrive. Because when everybody is wealthy, when everybody is economically and productively engaged, then government can collect more taxes, and governments can be able to provide more services. If, of course, services within government are provided through state-owned enterprises, the parastatals, for example. Because even if you have the Ministry of Energy, when I go to Malawi and there's power outage, I will not see the Ministry of Energy in Malawi. I will see MERA, not MERA. I will see ESCOM. I'll not even see MERA in the first place. I'll see ESCOM. So everybody will be saying ESCOM is letting us down, because ESCOM is probably the entity entrusted by the government to deliver these services. So what are the citizens really looking for? Now, apparently, citizens don't look for too many things. Not too many things, but there is a requirement. They are looking for education, health, education, health, employment for the youth. They are looking for water availability, electricity. Those are the things they are looking for. Not too many, but they also have a requirement. Let them be available. Let them be accessible. Let them meet our quality expectations. Let them be reliable. Let them be affordable. Let us have them delivered on a timely basis. Let us have them delivered in an efficient way. Let us have them delivered in a predictable way. Those are some of the things that the citizens want. And I sit back and I ask myself, if this is what the citizens want, why has it taken us so many years for us to basically do these things? Why? Of course, they want similar services. That's why we say that for a citizen, and I go to a particular Ministry of Health, because I don't know, I know I have gone to the Ministry of Health. So I would expect that those who are in the Ministry of Health, whichever door I go to, I'll get aided, I'll get supported to be able to access the services that I want. Of course, simplicity is important, and satisfaction in that is important. And this brings me to what I call the cone of plausibility. And I want to say here, we must move away from short-termism, because through my experience, I find we invest a lot of bundles and airtime discussing here, discussing now, discussing what political party, discussing personalities. Of what use and significance is that? And how much time are we spending thinking, choreographing, and curating the future we would like to see? And I'm glad AAPAM co-hosts this program with Chandler Institute of Governance. So we've picked a lot of experiences around the world. It's not about talking about Singapore. At a personal level, you may bring it there. What is the Singapore in each one of us? Because unless each one of us is able to say, this is my Singapore that I desire to work towards, and therefore we begin to say as a ministry, as a sector, as a government, as a country, this is what we want to do. And I know many government missions going to do benchmarking. And we are going to benchmark out there. Why don't we benchmark with each other more? Because we can then be able to say, these are lived realities for the African continents. And I see many a time we are saying we want to be world-class this, world-class that, even when within the continent or within the region, we are not heard of. Out of abundance of caution, vision says, but let them be pragmatic. Pragmatic. A child cannot run. A child has to crawl fast, then start walking, then they can run. I am not saying Africa should not do it, but I'm saying probably we've just been blindly following the rest of the world. Singaporean model may not work. European model may not work. Chinese model will not work. American model will not work. And I can tell you, because I did a bit of work in this space, I looked at what Singapore did. And before they came up with their transformational model, they looked at Europe, they looked at US, they looked at many parts of the world, and they only picked that which is working and which would be contextualized to them. Then they came up with a Singaporean model. I believe there are great things that are happening in Rwanda. There are great things that are happening in Kenya. There are great things that are happening in Lesotho. There are great things that are happening in Botswana, in Eswatini, in Zimbabwe. Why don't we take the best from each and every continent and work with it. But let me even bring it further a little bit. You know, we who are seated in this platform, I'm sorry to say, just as an example, we could be part of the problem. Let me tell you why. We go to benchmark in Singapore, and we go to benchmark in Europe and in Canada. And the money we are going to use to benchmark came from those countries. So we're actually contributing to capital flight. You're returning the money where it came from. Why don't we benchmark and start, when you benchmark within the country, within the continent rather, you know, you are keeping the money circulating within the African economy, the African continent. So you contribute to the development of Africa rather than being one who is also raping Africa. Africa has been raped enough. I am talking about transformational leadership, not in theory, but in practice. Many a time, many of us, from the village where we were born, you go there and you purchase and purchase and purchase things that you want to take to your parents and relatives in the village. And you're purchasing these things from the capital city. And when you go to the rural village, you are the first one to shout, this village, from the time I was young, it has not developed. How can it develop? How can it develop if you're not contributing to its development? How can it transform if you are not contributing to its transformation? It's that future that we need to start asking ourselves and start thinking within the limits of possibility and the future that we expect to see. For this to happen, let's not go looking for change elsewhere. We've said time without number, it starts with self. And we don't have time here, but the tragedy is there are way too many people who are moving around the continent and who are moving around the globe without realizing who they are. We must get to know, as Henry, who am I? Who am I? Is Henry me, or is that my name? We don't have too much time to go into it, but self-change. How can my country achieve its vision if I myself, at an individual level, do not even have one vision, do not have a vision? And what moral authority do I have to criticize the vision of the country when I don't have one? I invite you to reflect. How many of us seated here have a vision? If your country vision is 2040, how many of us have a vision 2040? How well shared and compelling is that vision? How shared and communicated is it to those whom you love and to those that love you? What game plan do you have to achieve that vision? What patience and persistence do you have? And how much faith, hope, and fortitude, and endurance power, and the determination do you have to make it happen? Self-change, because change and transformation will not take place at the institutional level, at the country level, unless those of us who are in leadership positions begin by and through that self-change. Critical success elements. I've talked about the vision, but beyond the vision, you must have the strategy, the how-to, the strategy, your game plan. We are now in the team of World Cup, the period of World Cup. And every team there, which is there, including the weakest one, is that their dream is to win the World Cup. But if they don't have a strategy on how they are going to go and about winning the World Cup, it just remains there. So I am advocating and articulating a scenario whereby when you have the vision and you have the strategy, and then, of course, the coach who is there with the World Cup team must also be able to say, I have assessed the capabilities and built the capabilities of my team. And I will continue to sharpen them, these capabilities. But that alone, the vision and the actionable strategy and the capabilities must be complemented with incentives that motivates and inspires the team to perform. But we must also ask ourselves, but do we have the resources? You know, it's only in Africa where we actually plan with resources that we don't have because we hope that the neighbors and the developed world will give us. It's only in Africa. I don't know how many of us, and I would be at pains to think that there is any one of us, who within your household, you can actually plan what you want to do during the year. And you say, it is because I'm expecting Henry will give me resources to do what we have planned to do as a family. I am not saying it's bad to look for resources elsewhere, but start with what we have and let us use what we have well and start asking ourselves, can we cut the cloth according to our size? But then, ladies and gentlemen, there must also be a sense of urgency. Transformation without urgency, it becomes just a talk show and people will begin to start questioning it. Success will come when you have these 6 parameters that I'm talking about: vision, actionable strategy, capabilities, incentives, resources, and a sense of urgency. If you do not have vision, confusion. If you do not have actionable strategy, false starts. If you don't have capabilities, anxiety. If you don't have incentives, resistance. And if you don't have resources, frustration. If there's no sense of urgency, what you're inviting is apathy. We need to have all the 6 for transformation to take place. The other thing I want to mention here is transformation as we know it. We have approached it wrongly. And I want to go further and say, the other challenge we've also had is that, you know, ladies and gentlemen, we belong to Africa. We are Africans. If I go to Uganda, somebody will speak to me in Baganda. If I go to Rwanda, somebody will speak to me in the local language. And the same would be said for any one country. If I came from Harare this morning, somebody will speak to me in Shona or Debele. English is not our language. And therefore, we don't think in English, we think in our mother tongues. But when things are put in English, sometimes they're not put in the right way. We have to remember any change is about people and for people. Any transformation is about people and for people. We've been told by the Bretton institutions, change the structure of government, reduce the wage bill, change the processes, change the systems, change the technology. But how will all those things work when the mindset has not been programmed? When cultural shift has not been achieved? When buy-in is not there? How? We have started with the hardware, and then we come along and start saying we need to start working on the software. Now, that's not the way transformation works. We must start with the software. And this is about diagnosing what the current scenario is, looking at what the future we want, and asking ourselves, how are we going to make the transition? This transition is where we are saying the driver and the bus passengers in the bus, we are all in it together. The principle of leave no one behind. The software is the people. That technology that you want to change will be changed because people have bought into it. Those processes and the structure that you want to change and the technology that you want to embrace, there will be a person behind it. Much as you may automate, much as you even may embrace AI. AI and people, technology and people, structures and people, systems and people, processes and people, the people equation. And this contributes 90% of the transformation. If you don't get it there, then however hard you try, it is dead on arrival. Then after that, you can come to the hardware to make the transition. So, and just to probably say here, when you talk about these people change, what is it that the people will be changing? Again, not too many things. Values, beliefs, behaviors, attitudes, actions. Let me repeat that again. What is it that will change in people? Values, beliefs, behaviors, attitudes, actions. Those things I've mentioned are very personal to holder. Because anyone who is an employee within the public service or an employee in the private sector or in an NGO is a grown-up person. So you cannot change anybody's behavior. You cannot change anybody's values. You cannot change anybody's attitudes. However, you can have a narrative and a conversation with that person to bring the person from the unknown to the known. And that requires a conversation, not directives. It requires a conversation, not directives. It requires a honest conversation. For me to realize as Hendry, Hendry, when you come to work late, citizens who are your employees are not happy. That Hendry, when you steal money earmarked for a patient in a hospital, that is not a good thing. And I can have a conversation with Hendry. So Hendry, when you steal that money, what do you do with it? And Hendry will say, I'll buy a flat. Mm-hmm. And after buying with a flat, what do? You bring in tenants. Mm-hmm. And when you bring the tenants, so you make more money. Mm-hmm. And when you make more money, what do? You buy more land. Until Hendry comes to a realization that however much land he will have bought, and however many flats he will have constructed, Hendry realizes that one day, having accumulated all this wealth, a time will come when he will breathe his last. And then you can ask him, but Hendry, tell me, when you breathe your last, those things, those pieces of land that you bought, and those flats that you bought, and those cars that you bought, how will they fit in the grave or in the crematorium where you'll be interred or where you'll be buried? Then Hendry can start realizing that life is not about what we accumulate. And I can then have a conversation with Hendry. What if these drugs that you stole, the money that was meant to buy the drugs, you did not steal it, and the money bought the drugs, and the patient who went there was your elderly mother, and your elderly mother got medication and got well? How would you feel in your heart? And Henry then can realize that it is a much better feeling to make these drugs available so that his mother can access that health care so that Henry can continue to see his mother a little longer. So I want to say that it is not talking about corruption. No, it is about bringing corruption into people's minds, people's hearts, so that people begin to look at corruption as something which is not good, but not telling them that it is not good. If you tell them it is not good, they will continue doing it. But let us engage in a conversation through appreciative inquiry and see what will happen. Just like somebody told me in a session I was facilitating, a true story of construction of a building. And this building had been completed. And the person who was constructing, who had constructed that building, went to a government office and was seeking a certificate of occupancy. And when he faced the official there, the official came and inspected, and the building was substandard. But the official, the person who was constructing, talked with the official and gave the official some envelope. And then the official granted the letter of the certificate of occupancy. And this official, his daughter had just completed university. And 2 weeks down the line, offices opened in that particular building. And companies started opening up for business. And this very government official had his daughter who had completed the university just some weeks before, who applied for a job for a company that occupied space in this very same building. And a few weeks later, the building collapsed and the daughter perished in that building. If only that official had actually realized that by signing that certificate of occupancy for a substandard building, I'm risking people's lives. And indeed, I am signing my daughter's certificate of death certificate, probably he would have looked at it differently. That software, cultural change, mindset change, values recalibration, behavioral change, attitude resetting, and action reorientation is what is needed. And that's the hard job. And it's not going to necessarily be a walk in the park, but we can have a candid, open conversation. And once we have won that battle, then we can start saying, life is not about me, but life is about the difference we, as the public servants, we make to the citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say, having said this, I want to conclude by just saying one thing. When I talk and when I make presentations such as this, I treat every chance and every opportunity I have to connect with my audience as a precious moment in my journey in life. And the only thing I promise is one, that I hope by the time I finish my talk, you'll have picked a piece of me. My only requirement and request again is, having taken that piece of me, that you treasure it and you keep it and you use it to make a difference. I want to conclude with one thing and call to action. Having heard this, and because I'm talking to senior government officials, I invite you to, in your own quiet moment, because leaders take a moment to introspect. And leaders must always take a time out to say, I am now having a meeting between me, myself, and I. In your own quiet time and moment, when God will grant you that opportunity to have that meeting with yourself, of me, myself, and I want you to take some moment to ask yourself, it is true, each one of us here will breathe our last. None of us knows when. None of us in this audience know who will be next, or who will come first, and who will go last. But the blunt reality is, we all will breathe our last. And I want you to ask yourself, When that moment has come and you have breathed your last, and we are coming for your internship, you're being interred. In whichever way and form, you'll be interred. Whether it is that coffin that you'll be lying still in as we lie you down, or it is that crematorium will take you to watch you burn and your ashes. What is it that those who will be around you will be saying about you? And what legacy will you have left behind? And what will this legacy mean for those that you serve and those that will come after you? For it is clear, whether you are being driven in A8, in V8, and somebody is opening the doors for you, or you're traversing the country by air and globetrotting around the world in business class, what goes up comes down, and we will all breathe our last. What is it that you will be remembered for, and what transformation and legacy will you have left behind? This is just my call to action that I would really say. Let us have better roads, let us have quality services, and so on and so forth. So I think, ladies and gentlemen, I would want to say, you've heard from me, and before I come to taking the questions, let me say this. Oftentimes we actually saying, just like Barack Obama said once, we have to choose hope over fear, because we are not here by mistake. We have to see the future as not something that is out of control, but as something that we can shape, and that we can actually shape it for the better. And that for us to do this, it requires us to have concerted and collective effort. And that's why, from where I sit, we must not only come together like we have done in this platform and in this session, we must also keep together. We must have and adopt that ego story. The eagles fly in a V shape, and when they do so, they increase their flight efficiency by 70%. We must embrace the spirit of the eagle, because as they fly in the V shape, if the lead eagle gets tired, they retreat to the back, and another eagle takes over to keep guiding the other eagles. We must keep to the team spirit and togetherness, that if one eagle falls sick, two other eagles will fall out of that formation so that they can keep company the eagle that fell sick, and they will remain with that eagle that fell sick until that eagle recovers. And if the eagle dies, the one who was sick, only then will they depart. And therefore we must learn the spirit of empathy, that one time we are in leadership position, and a time will come when we retire. The bed we laid, we will lie on it. So if we did not build hospitals when we were in the positions of leadership, in our old age, it is the very same hospitals we'll go to. If we did not construct good roads, probably it is still those roads that will die on. If we did not construct good schools, perhaps the quality of graduates, of students that we'll get from those schools will come to treat us in our old age and we may not get quality health care. So keeping together is progress, but we must work together because that is what success is all about. That is what success is about. With this, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much. I'll take the questions. I will open the floor to the questions, and along the way, then I will be happy to also respond to the questions that may have come in through the chat. Thank you very much. Let me take one or two. Okay. Very interesting topic. That is from Anatole. Thank you, Anatole. Sibongile is asking, how can public institutions redesign their organizational structures to achieve greater agility without weakening governance and without weakening oversight? And would I recommend flat structures or hierarchical structures? Let me first take that question. It's a brilliant question, Sibongile. Now, let me first give what has happened over the last 15 or so years, and probably it has accelerated over time. Number one, pre-COVID, we had structures of government where you would be required to be at your place of work. And therefore, you would, if you're working, if you said that you want to work from home, your supervisor will grin at you. COVID came and we all went home. Did government continue functioning? Yes, it did. We used to be called in the boardrooms for meetings. We still do. COVID came. Did it change the way government is structured and public institutions are structured? It did. Because we are now having more online meetings than we ever used to. Meetings continue, but the form and the format of those meetings changed. Indeed, you'll actually realize that just through that change alone made the meetings more efficient and made experiences showing organizations become much more productive. So when you look at the structure of government, and we can have a whole conversation about organizational structuring because, as a consultant, I help, one of organizational design and structures is one of the things that we do. You can structure the government around either functions or around services. The same we would say, of course, in, principles of structuring, or by geography. This is why you'll actually find that the ministries, for example, national, then you probably have the line ministers, going to the district level, if you have the districts, all the way to the service delivery. So functional approach, product or service approach, geographical approach. Those are the things that you do. In many cases, you'll actually find that when you look at strategy versus structures, the only one thing you see with the government is that as the statutory instrument that is coming to establish a particular institution, it comes ahead of the institution itself, and it's very prescriptive that you need to have representative from here, CEO, but of course, it does not tell you what kind of the departments and units you need to establish. When you have the leadership appointed, then they start asking themselves, but what kind of structure do we need to have? Now, relate that to the strategy. From a strategic point of view, we normally say, come up with a strategy first. Then the strategy will dictate what kind of structure is appropriate for us to execute this strategy. Now, the challenge with government is that strategies change, but the structures have remained rigid. So how are we going to redesign? Let me give you an example. Today's Gen Z is saying, I want to pay for my water bill from my phone. I want to pay for my electricity from my phone. I want to file my tax returns from my phone. I want to call for my transport from my phone. I want to ask for my hospital medicine from my phone. Everything, phone. So, while you probably will require, how can I put it? You still require the doctors, you still require the pharmacies, but are you going to have a pharmacy where you have employed so many people? Perhaps, maybe not. Or if you have employed those people will be doing the actual delivery of the services of these drugs that the population is asking for. So it may mean you rethink the structure of the pharmacy. It may mean you restructure the way you are receiving, it means you probably would automate some of those processes so that prescriptions to the patients are sent to you embrace e-health, for example. Now, the mode of delivery of e-health or the services that you are delivering in health, the services will not change. The mode of delivery will change. So to do that, again, picking another example, a long time ago, you write a letter to the head of public service through. But today, a Gen Z will have the email address of the head of public service, or they can get it. So those guys who are saying through, are they still needed? Maybe yes. Will they still be doing this the same way, old way? Maybe not. Maybe what we now need to do is to say, write to the head of public service and, well, discuss with your supervisor. Let your supervisor tell you, you can write, but copy me. The structure and the mode of delivery changes. And therefore, lessen the bureaucracy. So, will that weaken governance? I don't think so. So what we would then need to do is to actually rethink governance, modernize governance. And that governance is not about control. It is about facilitating, and it's about laying out the standard operating procedures and principles and educating the people about the way things should work. Does it take away the oversight? No. Does it modify the way we do the oversight? I think yes. So, hierarchical structures, would they still be necessary, and will they be value stealers or value creators or value protectors? And from where I sit, hierarchical structures will be entrenching bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is an enemy to operational efficiency. So, indeed, should we be very siloed in the way we look at those structures? No. And why do I say so? Because no one single problem at the public sector level or institutional level may necessarily be solved by one discipline. A financial challenge and the best solution to that financial challenge may come from HR experts. So what must we do? De-silo and work across functions, work across departments. This is why we talk about whole of government approach. This is where we talk about government delivering as one. This is why we talk about no wrong door. Because when you open and tap that way, somebody who was in HR appreciates what is happening in finance and will understand the challenges that people in finance are facing. Somebody who is in operations will understand the challenges that go along from the technical, that characterize the technical solutions we are looking at, and therefore create a very rich learning environment, so to speak. I think this is my comment to that question. But perhaps before I go to the second one, we can pick up a question. Maybe if it's anybody from on the floor would have some question, I would be happy to take that, and I will continue to also respond to the ones which are on the chat. Any question from the floor? Prof, it's good to see you. Prof Scott, it's good to see that you're in the house. Thank you very much. So Quinn is saying, I totally agree with you that when leadership changes, strategy should not change. My question is, or the question she's putting across is, how can African governments ensure that effective strategies are maintained by successful governments, especially when such strategies were the bedrock of a landslide win for a government that espoused it? Very good question, Quinn. Yeah, you know, let me again begin by just some analogy. I flew from Harare to Joburg this morning. When I got into the plane, and I'm just using this as an analogy before I come to the response to there, my idea was I needed to get to Joburg. I needed to get to Joburg. Now, I had the captain. There was a captain and there was the cabin crew. And there were many, many other passengers who were in the same flight. Now, and of course, there was the CEO for this South African Airways, that flight. Take the CEO, take the captain, take the cabin crew, and take the passengers. Did they have a different goal? I'm asking, let me just, if I call just one name, don't worry, sometimes I do that. Isaac Kabini, in that example I have given, there was the CEO for South African Airways. There is the pilot. There is the cabin crew. And there are the passengers. Did any one of them have a different intention? Isaac, what do you think?
Yeah. In my view, I don't think they have different intentions. The intention is to reach their destination safe at this stage.
Beautiful. Beautiful. To reach the destination safe. I brought that example to exemplify something here. So that plane will be flown by, let's say today Henry was the captain. Tomorrow it will be Esther Dagala, who will be the pilot. The following day it will be Angela Kagaruki, who is the pilot. But in the corporate headquarters, this airline should be going to Joburg. Will going to Joburg change because we have changed the captain? No. So where does the problem take place? It's because when we are coming up with these visions, we are not carrying the people along with us. Let me come now to the question of strategy. We wanted to get to Joburg. But somewhere along the way en route, the captain will actually find that there's very heavy turbulence, maybe in a certain section of that route. Does the pilot want to go through the turbulence for the comfort and safety of the passengers? No. What will the pilot do? Detour a bit, but still come back on course. Does that change that we are not headed to Joburg? Absolutely no. Joburg we must go. Joburg we must land. Might we land in time? Maybe not. But if we don't land in time because we had to detour for safety of the passengers and to avoid that turbulence, it is something which we can explain to the CEO. So, citizens' dreams and aspirations, should they be different from those of the leadership? No. Should they change from one leadership to the next? No. So how can African governments ensure effective strategies are maintained? I am glad you're talking about strong nations in this program. Institutions must be strong. So that comes to what kind of institutions do we build such that, it's very interesting what I have observed. You find an institution that is wavering from what their mandate is saying because they have been told by the leadership to waver. Yet the writing is in blueprint. Statutory instruments are saying do 1, 2, 3. Then the leader comes and tells you, don't do that. And it is not written anywhere. So is the problem the leadership, or is the problem the ones who are in leadership, or is the problem us who are supposed to ensure that we do according to the mandate? And I see the problem is us, the leadership, who are supposed to ensure that we do it according to the mandate. I know some of us here as principal secretaries, as senior government officials, one of your tasks is to advisory. But sometimes, are we telling the Prime Minister or the Deputy Prime Minister, Madam Prime Minister, Mr. Honorable Prime Minister, Your Excellency, are we telling them? Or are we just saying, yes, sir, yes, madam? And I'm saying this because sometimes I think we have blamed the leadership for the wrong narrative. It could be us who are not advising, because as the policy holder, as the policy executor, as the policy discharger, I am supposed to say, but according to this clause, which you told us and you gave us the mandate and you swore us, we were sworn into the office. As we are executors, when you change, we will change. But if you have not changed, I start to be guided, and you start saying, no, but if we do that. So I think sometimes we have been the ones who have allowed this to happen. So what am I advocating for here? To maintain this, we must build strong institutions. And institutions run on systems, run on procedures. This is why Trump comes into the office, will shout up and down, but he will still be told, Mr. President, Mr. President, Mr. President. How many of African economies can say, Mr. President, Mr. President? How many of the African institutions can say, Your Excellency, Mr. President, Madam President? So I don't know, this is to make that stick. And of course, again, in addition to that, I've talked about building strong institutions based on systems, based on competencies, because it's also about ensuring that those institutions have the right men and women who are serving in them and who understand. So it's also about communicating the vision and communicating the strategy. Communicate, 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 and communicate. Communicate. As a person sitting in this forum or platform, let us learn to share the vision of our institution, the vision of our countries, the vision of our government more and more so that it sticks. I think that's what I would say. Julie, I see you wanted, yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Julie. I've seen you. So let me take the other few questions that I think are online. Okay, so what if the citizens are not aware that they are more superior and instead they are made to believe that the government provides services out of love of its citizens? I think that's a good question. Then thank you very much. This is coming from Julius Luenje. Now, it's a good question. You know, one of the things that I think we have to be very intentional about and very deliberate about is citizen awareness and the rights of citizens. Sometimes we say, you know, we are creating that awareness, but I think we've got to do a little bit more. We cannot blame the citizens for not being aware. Again, it comes to the question of we as leaders, what have we done to create this awareness? We as institutions of government or public institutions, how much awareness have we created to those citizens who require energy or electricity in their homes, and when they apply for it and they are complaining, how much awareness have we created that if they have some complaint, this is where they should take it, and how are we communicating that? So I think this is basically, we've got to build that capacity of the citizens. I think it's not about blaming the citizens, and it's not about blaming the government. It's not about blaming the private sector. It's actually saying beyond, let's not do finger pointing. We know if we start doing so, we'll get into a shouting match. I think it's a question of what do we do, becoming more solution-based, so to speak. Okay, foreign services and military. A good question. I think this was in response to services that are exclusively being offered by government. Let me demystify that a bit. Military. You have some people who will hire security services for their private homes without necessarily calling the military. I guess, well, military, yeah, if you look at probably going to war as a country, probably yes. But I think if you're looking at security per se, if we bring it to security, security will not just be a preserve of the public sector. Foreign services. Many countries around the world now, in terms of issuance of visa, they have taken that to the private sector. So foreign services may not exclusively, again, be provided, I think in my view, be provided by the government. And those foreign missions themselves are also hiring quite a lot from the private sector, so to speak. The other question that is coming from Hassan, thank you, is whom do we have to blame for what the continent is undergoing through or is going through? Leaders or citizens? Great. And provided that our leaders in the continent are born and bred within the communities bearing the same traditional values. Okay, I think I would not want to blame anyone. I will not blame the citizens, and I will not blame the government for what we actually see. We are all into it. Government has contributed, citizens have contributed, all of us have contributed. So I think the healing point must be recognition by the various parties that there is a challenge, and then asking ourselves, starting that conversation on how do we work through it? How do we work through it? But we have to own up that things have not worked. If we keep blaming each other, again, I think we may not make very great progress. Transformation promises, this is from Non-Tobacco. Transformation promises agility and citizen-centered collaboration. But when entrenched bureaucracies resist change, that lever should a reformer pull first. The law. What lever should a reformer pull first? The law, the institution, or the citizen? Or the citizen mandate? Okay. Transformation promises agility and citizen-centered collaboration. But when entrenched bureaucracies resist change, what lever should a reformer pull first? The law, the institution, or the citizen mandate? And what we're trying to find out is whether reform should start by changing legal frameworks and regulations, by reshaping bureaucratic culture and processes, or by leaning on citizen demand and public pressure as the strongest driver of change. Thank you very much for that question on tobacco. Anytime, citizen is always the reference point. In fact, when you probably are kind of stuck in a dilemma, the question to ask is, how does it serve the citizen? That should be a tiebreaker. That should be a deadlock breaker. It's not about which institution is getting how much money. It's not about which political party is in power and how entrenched the bureaucracy is. The question is that bureaucracy, how citizen-centric is it? Let's refocus the conversation about the citizen. If you convince me that it is good for the citizen, then we'll go for it. If it's not, then drop it and rethink it and redesign it. Very good. Letty is asking the question, what to do with a leader who moved to the direction that is not working and people around are powerless to take that leader on. Okay. It is what I would call momentary moment of comfort. Momentary moment of comfort. Sooner than later, the scenario will change. Let me be a little bit blunt here and honest. The leader versus the people. The leader will fall. The people will remain. It doesn't matter when, but the leader will fall. The people will remain. And the countries around the world are awash with such examples. The leader will fall. The people will remain. So what normally happens, some of us may have read the Machiavelli principle. It's about dominance, it's about conquest, and those that have been trampled upon sometimes can only take it for so long. Then they bring a revolution. Then they install probably another leader. And if this leader is not responsive, then the equation will repeat itself. This is how some crises and some uprisings that we have seen in the world have come about. By the way, right now there's an uprising around the world. So if you look at elections that have been conducted around the world, you will see that the writings are on the wall on which direction and what population is really saying. Thank you very much indeed. I think someone is Tom is saying that he believes that the concept of bureaucracy, the concept of bureaucracy in the concept of bureaucracy, the bureaucracy has in the modern days has been seriously misunderstood and misrepresented. Responsibility levels and accountability levels should not be mistaken for bureaucracy. And I also believe that the young people, the Gen Zs, are seriously being misunderstood and misrepresented as people who don't believe in structures. What we need to do is to explain why we do things the way we do them and together agree on how to improve them. I believe in hybridity rather than complete replacement. My question is whether we have a country or organization that has purely replaced bureaucracy or gone virtual or digital fully. Thank you very much for that question. The answer, I think, Tom, is no. And you are quite spot on. Generations need each other. There's a lot that we can borrow from statecraft, from the people who have been in the who have served in the public service and who are older than us, who are older than the Gen Zs. On the other hand, Gen Z, I think, has also been misunderstood. By the way, there's a lot of positive energy that Gen Zs can bring on the table, if only we positively got time to understand them. And Steve Covey says, first seek to understand and then be understood. Before you actually, we start saying Gen Zs are troublemakers, Gen Zs are very impatient, Gen Zs are this, and before Gen Z start saying the old are very slow, they are very bureaucratic. No, I think it's opening up that conversation to be able to appreciate what does each side bring on the table. And you can imagine if the old bureaucrats, those who have served in the career public servants, shared the wisdom with the Gen Zs, engaged with the Gen Zs, how do we make it work more efficiently, more effectively, produce more impactful results? And you leverage on the knowledge and the exposure and the technological finesse that the Gen Zs bring on the table, and the creativity and the innovativeness, then surely we would have better solutions. Indeed, if the governments in Africa today engage the Gen Zs, and you told the Gen Zs that we want these policies to be disseminated, how can we leverage technology to disseminate the policies? Gen Zs will help you disseminate the policies using their technological and tech savviness. And we create jobs for them. If we want to have IFMIS working and fixed, or financial management systems, HR management systems, the payroll systems and procurement systems designed by the Gen Zs, Africa has that intellect, as opposed to exporting it and importing it from elsewhere. I think it's that engagement and that creating a space for everyone to create a compelling country, to create agile, resilient, and sustainable institutions, and to start laying the foundation for sustainable countries and that are well-rooted for their progress to come and for the future generations. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much indeed for listening to me. I do really fully appreciate very much your listening and your patience. Thank you very much. Julie, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Waruhio. Yes, I'm seeing a virtual clap, so indeed we can appreciate Dr. Waruhio for taking the time off his very busy schedule to share insights with us. I think that was a very thought-provoking presentation, and we really appreciate you. A lot of gems of wisdom you shared with us, and you remember we had the last cohort in Tanzania where you shared the same sentiments, so we're happy to have this sort of consistency and continuity where this cohort also gets to experience your wealth of wisdom. So thank you so much for that. Participants, you will all agree that Dr. Waruhio has very carefully told us the story on how the African continent was post-colonial, presenting the challenges that we have now in a VUCA environment and the wicked and interconnected challenges that we're having now. He has not gone further to tell us the values and the qualities of a transformational leader, providing us with a pathway towards the future that we want, including insisting on the importance of foresight and thinking about the future scenarios. So I think that was quite informative for us to learn. He was also very deliberate in mentioning why transformation has not worked. And I think this is quite relevant right now as we're now taking this cohort on to Singapore, where we're encouraging public sector leaders to think globally, yet act locally. Going to Singapore isn't the magic, the silver bullet that will fix our African economies, our African governments. However, it is important to have that global perspective, yet act very locally. So we really appreciate that. And Dr. Waruhio was very categorical in affirming transforming the continent's capacity and capability and wealth. I think the continent is well endowed with intellect, well endowed with minerals and resources that we could actually take this continent way, way ahead of some of these countries that we are benchmarking against. So we really appreciate that. And of course, the winning formula for success, which you presented very, very carefully as vision, actionable strategy, capacities, incentives, and resources, plus urgency, which is a winning formula for success. So thank you so much, Dr. Waruhio, for that very, very thought-provoking presentation. We really, really appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging on and waiting until this presentation ended. Thank you for your interactive questions and comments all through this session. We really, really appreciate you. We'll keep this discussion going as we will share this presentation with you, and we hope that we'll have this engagement even going towards segment 3. So with those few comments, it is my honor and pleasure to welcome the Secretary General of AAPAM, Professor George Scott, to give us the closing remarks and close for us this segment 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. Our AAPAM Vice President, Dr. Ayamga, our facilitator, Dr. Henry of ESAMI, our partners from Chandler Academy of Governance in Singapore, our very esteemed participants, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, you will agree with me that we have come to a very successful end of this online session of the Strong Nations for Africa program. On behalf of AAPAM, I express very sincere appreciation to all of you for your active engagement and thoughtful contribution to this session. You will all agree with me that today's session on leading public sector transformation, building agile, citizen-centered, and collaborative institutions in Africa, as indicated by a facilitator, has provided valuable insights into the leadership, institutional, and governance reforms required to build our great continent. The questions and discussions that followed have reaffirmed that the transformation of Africa's public sector is not merely an administrative undertaking, but a strategic imperative for achieving sustainable development. Let me thank Dr. Ayamga, the Vice President for AAPAM, for accepting to open this program at very short notice. I wish to extend very special appreciation to Dr. Hendry Waruhio, our Director of Research and Management Consultancy at SNFAP, for sharing such very wealthy and wealth knowledge of practical experience, supported by academic experience, thought-provoking perspectives. I believe you all agree with me that this presentation has challenged our thinking. I'm thinking of telling Julie to come out with a program where we will invite Dr. Henry to make another public presentation of this afternoon's presentation, so that we delve very deep into the very valuable information that he has put on the table today. Most important, dear participants, I have to commend you for the successful completion both the Rwanda segment and this second online segment. I strongly believe that your dedication to continuous learning and professional development demonstrate the caliber of leadership needed to have meaningful transformation across Africa's public institutions, as Dr. Henry has stressed all along. As we look forward to segment 3 of the Strong Nations for Africa program, I would like to express AAPAM's sincere appreciation to our partners, the Chandler Governance Group, for its continued collaboration and commitment to strengthening leadership and governance across the continents. As we all return to our respective organizations and countries, I take the opportunity to encourage all of you to translate the lessons and insights that we have gained through the program into very practical actions, as we have heard this afternoon. Let us continue to champion ethical leadership, strengthen institutional capacity, foster innovation, and build collaborative partnership that will enable our government to deliver better outcomes to citizens. Obviously, that is what we have heard this afternoon, that our citizens want better outcomes and delivery of services. Finally, let me invite you to two key programs of AAPAM that we have before the close of the year. When we met in Rwanda, I mentioned them and I just want to mention them again. The first is the leadership seminar to be held in September in Mombasa, Kenya. Many of you have inquired about it. It is coming on in September. And most importantly is that of the Roundtable Conference to be held from 8th to 11th December in the Kingdom of Lesotho. At this point, I have the honor to thank our Vice President, Dr. Ayamga, thank our facilitator, our great facilitator for this afternoon, Dr. Henry, but most important, to thank our very important participants of this very important program. At this point, I wish to thank all of you for the participation, your commitment, and your contribution towards the success of today's program. I thank all of you and wish all of you goodbye. Thank you again.